Rolbert Joachin was taken into custody after an extensive, coordinated manhunt. From the beginning, our commitment was unwavering, and our message was clear. We were not going home until Joachin was in custody. I want to thank our federal partners, along with our state and local agencies, for their relentless effort, coordination, and shared resources that assisted and ultimately led to his capture.
It was a quiet Thursday morning in Fort Myers, Florida, the kind of early hour when the city is still finding its feet. Street lights still on, the breakfast crowd not yet arrived, just the hum of a few cars pulling into a gas station on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, people grabbing what they need before another ordinary day begins. Inside the D&D convenience store, Nilufar Yasmin was doing what she did every single morning before her shift began. She was praying, down on her knees, facing her Lord in the back of a small store, before the world needed anything from her. She was a mother of 2 daughters. She had traveled thousands of miles from a small village in Bangladesh to build something real in America. She worked hard. She smiled at strangers. She was the kind of woman her community described with one word: kind. She had only been at this job for 3 months. 3 months. Then she heard it. The sound of glass shattering in the parking lot outside. Sharp, deliberate again and again. Nilufar stepped outside to see what was happening. Maybe she thought it was an accident. Maybe she just couldn't stand by and do nothing. That was the kind of woman she was. She didn't look the other way. But the moment she walked through that door, she walked into something she never saw coming. A man was standing next to her own car, hammer in hand. He had already destroyed her windshield. And when he saw Nilufar's face, he didn't run. He didn't flinch. He didn't say a word. He turned around and walked straight toward her. What happened next lasted only seconds, but those seconds were captured on surveillance camera. Every single blow, right there in broad daylight, in a gas station parking lot, in front of the whole world. Emergency services arrived and pronounced her dead at 7:27 that morning. She had 2 daughters at home, one in university, one working just across town, both waiting for their mother to come back. She never did. If you're into real true crime stories that dig deep into the facts and uncover the darkness behind them, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Crime Case Confidential brings you new cases every single week, stories that need to be told, victims who deserve justice, and truth that can't be ignored.
We've spent the last 2 days speaking with co-workers and family of the woman brutally killed in front of this gas station on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Highlands Avenue. They tell us her name was Yasmin, a loving mother to 2 daughters who hails from Bangladesh. Now a memorial is growing in front of that gas station as police work to put the pieces together with the suspect now in jail.
Everybody right now is sad, Not only me or not also my Bangladeshi community, also the whole of US people, also the whole around the world, they are very sad to see this news.
These are photos of the victim. Co-workers and family tell us her name was Yasmin, and she was always kind to everyone she met. People like MD Islam say the mother was just outside moments before the brutal attack.
She was good too because she came and she just did her prayer in the morning. I don't know why some people been crazy, we have no idea. Basically, actually, I cannot explain, So this same happened everywhere in this world. It's pretty bad right now.
To understand what happened in that parking lot on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, you first have to understand who Nilufar Yasmin was, because she wasn't just a gas station clerk. She was a woman who had spent decades building a life from nothing in a country that was never fully hers, and she was still going, still working, still pushing forward. Nilufar was originally from Kushakali, a small union in Lakshmipur district in southeastern Bangladesh. If you've never heard of it, that's the point. It's the kind of place where life is quiet, where community is everything, and where leaving means you're carrying the weight of everyone who stayed behind. Nilufar left, and she carried that weight every single day. She came to America and she built something, slowly, the way most immigrants do, not in one big dramatic moment, but in years of early mornings and long shifts and learning how to survive in a place that doesn't always make room for you. She had been in this country for close to 3 decades. She had put down roots. She had raised her daughters here, both of them, born and raised in America because their mother had done what she came to do. And she was still doing it. By the time this story takes place, Nilufar was living in Fort Myers with her 2 daughters. She had separated from her husband and was raising those girls largely on her own. Think about what that means for a moment. A woman, far from her home country, single mother, her daughters depending on her. No safety net. No fallback plan. Just her faith, and her willingness to work. And she worked. She worked the way people work when stopping is simply not an option. People who knew her described her the same way every single time: kind, gentle, warm. The kind of person who made wherever she was feel a little more like home. Community members who gathered after her death said she was always smiling, always had a word for everyone. Coworkers said she was the kind of woman who made a small convenience store feel like a place people actually wanted to be. She had spent years doing different jobs across different parts of Florida, Miami, Palm Beach, and then Fort Myers, the Gulf Coast, warm year-round and home to a tight-knit Bangladeshi community that she had become part of. These are people who look out for each other, who share meals and prayers and the particular kind of bond that comes from being far from home together. When Nilufar died, they organized. They grieved. They raised money for her daughters and worked to bring her body home to Bangladesh. That is the kind of woman she was to her people. A few months before her death, she took a job as a cashier at the D&D convenience store on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The store was Bangladeshi-owned, run by people from her community. The property owner, Arif Ahmed Ashraf, also serves as General Secretary of the Bangladesh Association of Florida. The manager, Mohammed Shipu, knew Nilufar personally. This wasn't just a job to her. It was familiar. It felt safe. It felt like the kind of place where someone like her belonged. Every morning she came in before the rush. Every morning she prayed first. That was her routine. That was who she was. Faith before work. God before the world demanded anything from her. She was someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's neighbor. The kind of person her community would miss long before they ever found the right words for it. And somewhere across town, a man was about to walk into that store for the second time. The first time had seemed like nothing, a frustrating moment, an argument that ended when he walked out the door. Nobody knew he was coming back. The Tuesday before she died, Rolbert Joachin walked into the D&D convenience store. He wasn't there to shop. He walked up to the ATM machine inside, tried to withdraw money, and it didn't work. Maybe the card declined. Maybe he entered the wrong PIN. Whatever the reason, the machine did not give him what he came for. And he blamed Nilufar. He walked up to the counter and demanded she give him cash, right there, on the spot. Nilufar stayed calm. She explained the way she had probably explained things to difficult customers 100 times before, that the ATM belonged to a bank. It was not the store's machine. She had no control over it. She even suggested he may have entered his PIN wrong. She could not give him money that wasn't hers to give. She was just doing her job. He didn't see it that way. He got loud. He got angry. He got abusive. He said the machine had taken his money and someone needed to answer for that. A Spanish-speaking employee who was also in the store helped keep things from escalating further. Eventually, Joachin left. In a rage. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because Rolbert Joachin didn't go home and cool off. He didn't call his bank and sort it out. He didn't move on the way most people do when something frustrating happens and life keeps going. Instead, he did something that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of cold that was inside this man. He went away and he planned. Investigators would later learn that before he came back, Joachin made a deliberate decision about what to wear. He put on the same yellow shirt he had been wearing during the ATM dispute, the same one, on purpose, so that when Nilufar saw him, she would know exactly who he was. Think about that for a moment. That is not anger. That is something far colder. That is a man who spent 2 days deciding exactly how he wanted this to go, who he wanted her to see coming. Thursday morning, April 2nd, 2026. Nilufar arrived at work before the rush the way she always did. By around 6:30, she had completed her Fajr prayers, the Islamic dawn prayer in the back of the store. She was at peace, ready to begin her day. Then the sound came. Glass shattering, sharp and deliberate, from the parking lot outside. She stopped, got up, and went to see what was happening. What she found was Rolbert Joachin standing next to her car. Her personal vehicle parked right there in front of the store. He had a hammer in his hand and he had already destroyed the windshield. Not cracked it, destroyed it. She spoke to him. She asked him what was wrong. Why was he doing this? He didn't answer with words. He turned around and walked straight toward her, hammer still in hand. What happened next lasted only seconds, but every single second of it was captured on the store's surveillance camera. The first blow came fast. She fell. He didn't stop. He struck her again and again. Witnesses and investigators reviewing the footage counted multiple blows after she was already on the ground, after she was already no longer a threat, after there was nothing left to defend against. He just kept going. A neighbor who had been in the area turned the corner and saw Joachin walking away from the entrance. Then he saw Nilufar lying on the ground near the store. At first he thought she was sleeping. Then he looked closer and saw the blood pooling around her head. He knew immediately. Emergency services were called. They arrived and did everything they could. But Nilufar Yasmin was pronounced dead at 7:27 that morning. She had walked outside to ask a simple question. That was all. And Rolbert Joachin had spent 2 days making sure that question would be the last thing she ever asked. He was found about a mile away later that same afternoon. Officers who had prior encounters with him, as recently as the week before, recognized him from the surveillance footage. They spotted him walking calmly on Mango Street, like a man with nowhere to be and nothing to answer for. He was wrong about that.
Gruesome video captures the moment an illegal migrant allegedly murdered a woman with a hammer in broad daylight outside a Florida gas station while he left her to die in a pool of her own blood. The gas station clerk, who has not yet been publicly identified, was pronounced dead at the scene at the Chevron gas station in Fort Myers. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the alleged killer's name is Rolbert Joachin. Court documents state that he provided a detailed confession of the murder, and in court on Wednesday, a detective revealed even more.
Did he specifically tell you that he went there to kill the victim in this particular case?
He did.
Detectives say Joachin had showed up to the gas station 2 days before the murder, where he was seen wearing the same clothes, a yellow graphic t-shirt and shorts, that he was wearing on the day of the alleged attack. In the moments before the horrifying killing, Joachin was spotted in the parking lot, holding a knife and a mallet, which he used to strike an SUV, which was reported by Gulf Coast News to be the victim's car. When she came out in response, he allegedly began to bludgeon the defenseless woman.
By the time Fort Myers Police Chief Jason Fields stood in front of cameras on Friday afternoon, his department had already done something remarkable. They had their man, arrested the day before. About 7 hours after Nilufar Yasmin took her last breath in that parking lot. In a city of over 100,000 people, with a suspect who had no fixed address and no obvious ties to keep him in one place, they found him in hours. But finding him was only the beginning. Because the bigger question, the one that Nilufar's community, her daughters, and anyone following this story needed answered, was not just who did this. It was why. On the surface, the motive seemed almost impossible to accept. A failed ATM transaction, a brief argument, a woman doing her job the right way. That was it. That was all it took for Rolbert Joachin to decide that Nilufar Yasmin needed to die. But to really understand what happened, you have to understand who Rolbert Joachin was. And the picture that emerges is not one of a man who just snapped. It is the picture of a man already carrying something dangerous long before he ever walked into that store. Joachin was 40 years old at the time of the attack, a Haitian national. He had entered the United States in August of 2022, specifically arriving by water vessel near Key West. When Border Patrol arrested him, he was processed and then released. An immigration judge issued a removal order against him just 1 month later, in September of that same year. He was supposed to be deported. That never happened. Instead, in 2023, the government granted him temporary protected status, a humanitarian designation that shields certain foreign nationals from deportation when conditions in their home country are deemed too dangerous for return. Haiti's TPS designation goes back to 2010, when a catastrophic earthquake devastated the country. Over the years, the reasons for renewal kept growing: political instability, gang violence that eventually swallowed up most of the capital, humanitarian collapse. Joachin's TPS was approved. He was allowed to stay. That status formally expired in 2024, but through a pending renewal application, he maintained certain legal safeguards that kept him in the country. He was still here, still in Fort Myers, and those protections were only officially stripped away on April 10th of this year, 8 days after Nilufar was killed. And yet there he was that morning, living as a transient, no fixed address, listed in jail records simply as homeless. He had been seen enough times in the neighborhood around MLK Boulevard that multiple officers had prior encounters with him, as recently as the week before the murder. He was not invisible. He was not hiding. He was simply there in the way that people without homes or stability tend to be, present but unaccounted for. Multiple Bangladeshi press outlets reported that Joachin had long been known to struggle with mental health issues. What exactly those issues were, what treatment, if any, he had ever received, and whether they played a role in the events of April 2nd, none of that has been fully established publicly. What is established is this: he was a man who had been ordered removed from the country, whose legal protection had lapsed, who was living without shelter, and who, on the morning of April 2nd, walked to that gas station armed with a hammer and a plan. This was not a robbery. Nothing was taken. This was not a dispute that got out of hand in the moment. He came back 2 days later. He dressed deliberately. He brought a weapon. The motive, as cold and as senseless as it is, appears to be this: Nilufar Yasmin embarrassed him. She held her ground when he tried to bully her. She didn't give him what he demanded. She was calm and professional when he was loud and out of control, and something in Rolbert Joachin could not let that go. For 2 days he sat with it, and whatever was burning inside him, wounded pride, unresolved rage, a mind that could not process a simple rejection, it built into something fatal. He came back dressed so she would recognize him. He wanted her to know it was him. He wanted her to see his face before the end. That detail is the one that stays with you. Most people, even people who do terrible things, don't plan it that way. They don't want to be recognized. They wear masks. They act in darkness. They try to disappear. Rolbert Joachin wanted to be seen. What does that tell you about the kind of hatred he had built up over a 48-hour period toward a woman who had done nothing more than tell him the truth? After his arrest, Joachin was taken to the Fort Myers Police Department. He was read his rights in both English and Creole. He agreed to speak to detectives, and according to the arrest report and detective testimony given under oath at his pretrial detention hearing, he confessed. He told them he went to the gas station specifically to kill her. He told them he destroyed her car to draw her outside. He told them about the clothes. He told them everything. Rolbert Joachin was charged with second-degree murder and criminal mischief for the destruction of Nilufar's vehicle. ICE immediately lodged an immigration detainer against him, meaning that regardless of the outcome of the criminal case, federal authorities intend to deport him. At his pretrial detention hearing, Judge Nick Thompson denied bond, citing the violent nature of the attack, the defenselessness of the victim, Joachin's lack of community ties, and his own confession. He is currently being held in Lee County Jail. And in a small village in Lakshmipur district in southeastern Bangladesh, a family is waiting, not for justice, not yet, just for answers to a question that still doesn't make sense. How does a woman survive decades in a foreign country, raise her daughters, build her life, show up to work one Thursday morning and not come home? Because a man she had never met before that Tuesday decided that her calm, professional response to his anger was something worth killing over.
Meantime, you'll be held no bond. Your next court date will be on Monday. You'll also have an arraignment on the 4th at 8:30. You're also do not have any type of contact with the victim's family. And counsel, as you're aware, you'll need the assistance of interpreters, so you need to make those arrangements and be met with him this weekend, if not today.
The Department of Homeland Security says Rolbert Joachin is from Haiti. He first came to the U.S. in August of 2022 near Key West, smuggled in on a boat. U.S. Border Patrol arrested him. Joachin was turned over to ICE, and there was an order to remove him from the country. Federal officials say the prior administration allowed him to stay once he was granted temporary protected status.
He applied later in 2023 and then reapplied in 2024. So there was a vetting process that happens during that application window, but he did not actually have it until then.
Yesterday, the Trump administration stripped that safeguard away. Fort Myers detectives say Joachin admitted he planned to kill the Chevron clerk on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard 2 days prior to this brutal attack where he hit her in the head with a hammer. That woman, Nilufar Yasmin, was a mother of 2 daughters. ICE says they will work with the state on whether or not they will take and deport Joachin before his final day in court. Now in court this week, detectives with Fort Myers Police also said that Joachin is a suspect in another case that they've been following for the past few months, but they still haven't disclosed what that case is yet.
Rolbert Joachin is in a cell at Lee County Jail. His arraignment is scheduled for May 4th. That is when he will formally face what he did in a courtroom, the surveillance footage, the confession, the yellow shirt pulled from his backpack, all of it waiting for him. He is not going anywhere, but here is what the courtroom cannot give back. Within hours of Nilufar's death, flowers started appearing at the gas station on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. People who knew her, people who had never met her, members of the Bangladeshi community in Fort Myers who recognized in her story something they had all carried at some point, the weight of being far from home and still showing up anyway. They laid flowers. They lit candles. They stood in the parking lot where she died, and they refused to let it just be a crime scene. A GoFundMe campaign was set up by Samir Bahadur Sid, president of the Bangladesh Association of Southwest Florida, who was authorized by the daughters themselves to manage it. The campaign described Nilufar the way everyone who knew her described her, as a devoted mother who worked tirelessly for the 2 people she lived and worked for. Think about what those daughters are carrying right now. Their mother's final moments, the parking lot, the hammer, every blow were posted on social media, shared across the world, played on news channels, debated in the halls of power by people who had never heard her name before that morning. Her death became a national flashpoint almost instantly, a political argument, a data point in a much larger fight. And her daughters were simply trying to figure out how to get through the day without her. That is the part that does not make the headlines. The private grief, the phone that does not ring anymore, the ordinary Thursday that will never feel ordinary again because that was the day she was alive and nobody knew it would be her last. Now step back for a moment and look at the full picture this case leaves you with. 2 immigrants, both in Fort Myers, both on the same street. One of them spent close to 3 decades building something in this country, worked every job she could find, raised 2 daughters on her own, prayed before every shift, smiled at every customer. She followed every rule this country asked of her. She worked. She raised her daughters. She showed up. The other had a removal order on file since 2022. No home, no employment, known to local officers by face. His legal protections expired. Still here, still present, still walking those streets every single day. The system knew about one of them and did nothing. The system never had to know about the other one. She never gave it a reason. And on a Thursday morning in April, those two lives collided in a gas station parking lot, and only one of them ended. Nilufar Yasmin prayed before the world asked anything of her. She deserved to have those prayers answered differently. Rest in peace, Nilufar Yasmin.